Good evening, the girl Vonda. Whew, I don't know about anybody else, but has been definitely a long week. It's a long week, and I am happy that it is Thursday and just ready to get the week going. So tonight we have a great topic tonight. Tonight we're gonna be talking about I'm gonna put it in the chat. Tonight we're gonna be talking about unhealed labels. In my healing process, I realized that I had to make sure that I understood um, that I carried some labels. I really carried some labels, and I really just want to kind of, talk about that tonight and talk about how that made me feel and, going through the process of healing from that. So, I'm going to dive into that and we're going to, hey, I'm lagging. These Tonight, we just going to talk about unhealed labels and how we can make sure that we understand that we have to recognize those in our healing process as well. So when I think back on when in my healing process, when I think back, I think about in the process of my healing, I thought about, as when you're growing up, you always heard, you're just like this one, you're just like that one. You act just like your father, you act just like your mother. You'll never, be anything, you'll never do anything. These are some things that, sometimes you heard in your childhood that they may have been said in anger. They may have been said in frustration. But however, whether it was said in frustration or even if it was said in, to intentionally, I want you to know that once you start the healing process, this is an area that you also want to make sure that you address. And I remember, me thinking back, on just some of the labels that I was given as a child. You know, I was never good enough. I probably would never, do anything in life. I probably would just be another statistic. I probably would, have a whole bunch of kids out of wedlock. I probably, would never really do anything. You know, um, just nothing really positive was said to make me think that I could be somebody great in life. Let's just say that. So, with that being said, I've always, you know, I don't know, I want to say, I guess, carry like some type of animosity, some type of just anger. I think that's the word, anger, because I was a very angry person growing up. So when I started thinking back on it, as I was going through this healing process and going through, the process of unpacking these unhealed labels, the very first one I recognized in myself was reoccurring negative self-talk and frequently finding myself thinking critical and limiting my thoughts about myself. Now, when I say, let me just break that down. You know, when you've never really heard anything positive about yourself, or no one has, given you, like, help build your self esteem and help build you up, you you don't have anything to really think positive about. Everything that you think about is it's negative. It's just simply negative. Everything that you think about is just simply negative. You know, a negative thought about everything. Even when you comment about things, you always have a negative response first. And that was just stinky thinking on my part. But, in the beginning, I just thought that that was normal. That was normal, just basically to have a negative reaction about things. I didn't know that you were supposed to look at the positive. So you have to understand that when, you know, you are a product of your environment. And because, that was in my environment, I automatically thought you had to look down the negative in it first, and then once you find the negative in it, you just dwell on it. So then when you begin to stop dwelling on it, you understand that it is a good thing to think positive. It is a good thing to look at it a different way. And so once I started to recognize that everything I thought about was kind of negative, and I didn't want to be that negative person anymore. I wanted to think positive. I wanted to have a great outlook on things. So when I began to start working through this through therapy and all of that, the first thing I had to know that I had to change my mindset. So if nothing else, just need to know that your mindset has to change. Once your mindset changes, then everything else will follow behind it. Everything else that you're trying to do and you're trying to accomplish in your healing process, it will fall into place once you begin to change that negative thinking. And once I began to do that, the next thing I had to recognize is that I had a fear of failure, and also I had an issue with avoiding things. Fear will cripple you. And I can tell you for so many years how fear crippled me from doing the things that I wanted to do in life that I knew that was going to make me happy and to be successful. And y'all give me 1 second. And I was so fearful. You guys don't even know, just this is me conquering one of my fears, just sitting right in front of this camera right now speaking. And I only got there because I understood that fear will cripple you. Fear will cause you to basically be incapacitated. You will be at a place to where you can't even function. And when you can't function, everything in your life is just feels chaotic. You desire to do so many things, but that fear, the fear of failure. And I think that came from you because when you've heard nothing but negative in your childhood, you failing is just solidifying what they're saying. And because even what they're saying is not even true, let's go there first of all. What whoever is saying is not even true about you. Um, you just become fearful. So you stop trying, or you won't even begin to try things. I know it was so many things, me growing up in my, womanhood that I wanted to try and I wanted to do, but I never did them because of fear. The fear of failure was real. But I had gotten to a point to where I was so just sick of being fearful that I made myself do things fearful. I'm like, if I'm gonna be fearful about it, I'm gonna just do it. If I'm gonna be scared, I'm gonna do it scared. Because I had gotten to a place to where I was just miserable. I was unhappy. I was, just miserable because it was so many things that I desired to do, and because of this fear, I couldn't do them. And because I couldn't do those things, mm, it eats away at you. It eats away at you to a point to where you have to just say, you know what? If I'm ever going to do what I desire to do in this life, I'm probably going to have to just go ahead and do it fearful. And once you begin to understand that um that fear is false evidence appearing real, then you will understand that the more you push yourself to do it, the more you understand that, why did I fear this? I know one of the biggest things for me was, I was a high school dropout, and I, desired to go back to school to get my GED. And that was one of the most fearful, I mean, when I tell you, I mean, oh, it took me at least a good year and a half, maybe almost 2 years just to get past the fear of just walking into a classroom again. And once I got in there, you know, some of that fear went away. Then, I was fearful that, we had to take the test at the end. I was fearful that I wasn't going to pass it, but I still did it. And I want you to know that I was able to pass all of those courses the first try. And I got my GED. And from there, hey, then I felt like skies was the limit. I decided to go to college. I was fearful doing that. I didn't think, once you do the testing for college, I wasn't gonna make it in. So I went. I remember it was. I went, and I was just inquiring. I didn't know right then they were gonna make me do like the assessment test just to see if I even, qualify, or either I was even able to even attend college. So I took the test right then, and when I took the test right then, she came back a few minutes later, and she was like, Miss Felder, she was like, if you want to, she was like, we can go ahead and get you back there to financial aid, and you can go ahead and start enrolling in these business classes. I was like, who, me? Not me. Are you talking about me? And, immediately I went ahead and I started enrolling in the classes, and, you know, I got my business degree, associates, and then went back for my bachelor's. So, if I would have stayed in that place of fear, I would never have done those things. I would have never pushed forward and know that, I was smart enough to do it. I remember hearing that one time. I remember hearing that, oh, you weren't smart enough to do that. I remember a job. One time I took a job, and I took the job only because someone told me that I wasn't able to get the job, that I didn't have the background, I didn't have the knowledge to do it. And I just wanted to prove them wrong. And I actually got that job, and I stayed on that job for 8 years. And that was just me proving a point to that you're not going to label me. You're not going to label me with that I'm not going to be able to do something. For so long, you heard that, and then you start believing that. And once I stopped believing that, and once I started believing in me, then I understood that skies was the limit for me. I understood that I was the only person that could hold me back, and I was the only person that could allow these labels to hold me back from doing the things that I want to do in life. We've all heard them. We've all heard that you're just like your father, you're just like your mother, you're just like this one. Oh, you'll never be anything, and you'll never do anything. We've heard those things, and that lie that somebody said that words don't hurt, that's a lie from the pit of hell. That you say that words don't hurt. Words do hurt, because if they didn't hurt, then they wouldn't play back, and they wouldn't you wouldn't feel the wounds from them. So once I understood that fear was holding me back from living my life. Another thing is procrastination. Procrastination is also another way to recognize that you have unhealed labels, because you leave a lot of things unsaid and undone. And when you leave a lot of things unsaid and undone, then you leave space for people to continue to label you. See, once I stop procrastinating and stop talking about the things I wanted to do and begin to start doing them, then you back people up off of you. Once you can, back people up off of you and say, hold up, wait a minute, I might not be moving at the speed of lightning that you want me to move, but I do see my progress. I do see where I've moved. I do see where I've grown. I do see where I've progressed. But I know for a very long time I was in a procrastinated state, because I procrastinated for almost 10 years going back to school. I procrastinated on, a lot of things in life. But once you begin to understand that time is short and that time winds up, that you then understand that you don't have time to waste. That time waits for nobody, and that you can get no time back. And I understand that now, with me about to get ready to hit that 50 mark this year. Yeah, I had to kind of, that 50 mark this year, that I understand that I don't have no time to waste. I don't have no time to procrastinate. Anything and everything that I want to accomplish and to get done in this life, I have to I have to do it. I have to do it. I have to move forward. Another area that resonated with that unhealed label is being very sensitive to criticism. And I think that's still a kind of a area, if I'm gonna be honest and be real, is that that's still an area that I'm working on. Um, you know, uh Sometimes I can be sensitive to feedback. We all can be, but I'm a type of person, it's all about how your tone is with me. I I'm all about how you kind of talk to me, how you kind of carry me, how you kind of hold me, or how you kind of speak to me. Because I guess that's one of those unhealed things, because, I'm very sensitive on how you speak to me. Because when you've been talked down to, and when you've been talked at, and when you've been emotionally abused, it you don't let nobody talk kind of crazy to you. I don't let people get slick at the mouth to me, and I'm very quick. I'm very quick at the mouth, because what you're not going to do is that you're not going to cut me down. You're not going to turn me down. You're not going to belittle me. You're not going to do those things to me, you know. And then I had to, at some point, realize that I needed to make sure that I didn't do the same thing to somebody else. Because, it's easy to be able to pick up what you've been taught of what you've been through. So you have to be very careful. I know I had to be very careful in that place. Another area is self-sabotage. Sometimes I know I went through the kind of self-sabotage of, oh, it's no need me even trying to do that because it's not gonna work, it's not gonna pan out. I shot myself down before I even gave myself a chance. Before even giving myself a chance, I shot it down. Didn't even try, and just automatically felt like I wasn't going to be able to do it. That's some stinky thinking. I'm so glad I'm not in that place anymore. But you'll do that. You'll build a whole war in your head, and there's not even a war going on. I had to realize that I had to make sure that I understood that sometimes you can build a war in your own head just because of how you've dealt with things in life, or how you dealt with these labels that you didn't understand, that dealing with these labels over your life caused such a big effect. When you carry these unhealed labels, you don't understand how many areas in your life that it actually affects until you can sit back and look at your own life. When I began to sit back and look at my own life, I understood that, that I had negative talk, I had fear and self-sabotage. And then not only that, I was just sensitive, sensitive about things that, um, that really I probably shouldn't even had to be sensitive about, but because I was in a place of, not being healed from those labels, you know. And then the next thing is this low self-esteem. I can say probably majority of my life I dealt with low self-esteem. I would say that I kind of growing up, I kind of put on like a little bit of the mean girl, just because I didn't really want to show that I had low self-esteem. I didn't feel like I was I always felt like I was the ugliest girl in the room. I always felt like I was the biggest girl in the room. I was the most, overdeveloped girl in the room. I was a girl that had the most pimples in the room. I was the girl that had the biggest nose in the room. I was the girl that had the biggest lips. I was the girl that probably no dude, I was the last, one they would talk to, or, even in a room, I always felt like I was the smallest person in the room. And that was because at that time having low self-esteem. So, a lot of times people don't understand where you came from or what you've been through to where why you build yourself up now. I have very high self-esteem now. I hold my head up. When I walk in a room, I command the room. And the reason why is, and it's not being arrogant, it's not being, boastful, or trying to be anything else. It's just because from what I come from. When you come from low self-esteem, you have to build your own self up. You cannot wait for anybody else to build you up. You have to build your own self up. And the reason why you have to build your own self up is because if you wait for somebody else to build you up, you may be waiting a long time. You may be waiting a very long time for somebody else to build you up. So since you shouldn't, I couldn't wait on anybody else to build me up. I began to build myself up. I began to say my own little affirmations to myself. I began to say that, I understood that my words had power. And when I began to understand that my words had power and that when I walk in a room and I command, or I walk in a room and I know how to command it with my words and with my actions, it's not about boasting. It's about that, hey, it took me 50 years, almost 50 years to get there. And because it took me almost 50 years to get there, I'm not going to allow anything, any person, anyone, anything to basically allow me to see myself anything but on a higher level. On a higher level. When And that's a great thing that I understand now going through this healing process is that you value yourself and your time so much more. So much more. You value the people that you are around, you value the time that you spend. Everything to you becomes valuable. And once you've identified those things, maybe you can relate to those things that I've said that I was able to uncover in me, uncovering that, negative talk, the fear, being sensitive, self sabotage and low self esteem. And, with that low self esteem, also, I realized that you kind of would allow yourself to be in I allowed myself to be in a space of that it's okay to self-sabotage yourself. I thought that was a normal thing to do. I felt like if I go ahead and be hard and critical on myself, then nobody else could do it. But now I understand that I have the right not only to give myself a little bit of grace, but also I have the right to not allow anybody else to tear my self-esteem down. Recently I have lost about 115 pounds, somewhere around there. And believe it or not, you get bullied when you're a big girl. And then you also get bullied when you lose weight and get healthy. Now you hear, oh, you so skinny. Oh, you skinny mini. No, I'm not skinny mini. I need you to understand that number one, I took control of my life. I wanted to live and I wanted to be healthy. So the reason why I decided to take control of my life was number one, when you put on a lot of weight and you have a lot of weight on, that also messes with your self-esteem. That also that excess weight is also a, a offset of those unhealed, unresolved things, those labels. So when I began to take the weight off, I also took the labels off. And now that I'm at a smaller weight and I'm at a healthier weight, and now when somebody says that to me, I have to immediately shut that down. I have to meet. No, you're not. No, 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 no. You're not going to make me feel like that. Oh, now I'm too small. Now I'm too this. No, I have consulted my doctor. I have a surgery team. I have a whole team of people, and they're saying I am doing amazing. And if I wasn't doing amazing, then I would let you know that I wasn't doing amazing. But I'm doing an amazing job, and I'm not going to let you tear me down. I had somebody, just kept saying it to me. I'm like, hold up, wait a minute, you're not gonna keep on saying this to me. I'm sorry that you used to see me in an unhealthy, unhealed way. This is the new, improved, healed, healthy, and whole. See, I now know how to shut that down. Now I know how to not allow you to be able to make me begin to start reverting back to that negative thinking, of those negative thoughts about who I am, and you know who I am. I know who I am now. I know who I am. I know whose I am, and I know what I will allow and what I will tolerate and what I will not tolerate. And the one thing that, once I began to start with that negative, now I'm always trying to hurry up and spin it. It used to take me a lot longer to get past things, but now I'm beginning to get past them a lot faster because I don't want to harbor anything. It is too exhausting to be angry, upset, mad, frustrated. It takes too much energy for all of that. And because it takes too much energy for that, I'm choosing not to do that. I'm choosing basically to let me be in it for a moment. And then after that moment is over, I'm done with it. I am done with it. Give me a moment, because the way I had to process it and the way I healed from it, it was just simple. Once I identified and I acknowledged the labels that were put on me, specifically the negative ones, the ones that I internalized my whole entire life, once I began to acknowledge them and recognize them, I began to start healing from them. I was then able to speak to those internal things and say, no, you are somebody. You are good enough. You are smart enough. You can do anything that you put your mind to. Once I begin to acknowledge it, the second thing I began to do is I started challenging those labels. I wanted to see what validity did these labels over my life really have. Were they a fact or were they opinion? And when I began to start thinking about that, were some of those things over my life facts or opinions? I I realized that those were the opinions of the people that were in my life. They weren't facts. I was smart enough to do it. I was good enough for that man. I was enough. Once I realized that those were just opinions, and I understood that a lot of those came from my childhood, and I told y'all my story with my daddy issues. A lot of those labels, a lot of those unhealed labels came from my father. And once I began to start healing from those, when I would have conversations with him, I would make sure I let him know, no, you're not going to say that to me. No, you're not going to do that. And I remember one time, um my middle son Demaje, I remember one time my father came over, and Demaje was the kid that smiled all the time. He had the most amazing smile. And my dad had said to him, "What are you smiling for like that? You're nothing but a little devil." And I wasn't at home at the time, when my father had said that to him. And when I had gotten back home, I noticed that he wasn't smiling. And I said to him, I said, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, "What's going on?" And he said, "Papa said to me that why I'm smiling like that, I must be nothing but a little devil." And he said, "And I'm not no devil." And I understood right then that that was a label that was trying to be put on my baby. And I said, "So you feel like that hurt your feelings and that you know that that's not what you are, correct?" And he was like, "Yes." And he was probably about maybe 4, 5, maybe 5 or 6. And I nicely went and I got my phone and I dialed my dad's number and I told my dad to hold on 1 second and I put Demaje on the phone and I allowed him to be able to automatically take that label off himself. He said, "Papa," he said, "you said to me that I'm grinning and I'm laughing and I must be a little devil." He said, "And I'm not no devil." And he said, "And I want you to know that. And I don't want you to ever say that to me again." And I want you to know that my dad instantly apologized to him. And my dad instantly apologized to him. And as soon as my dad apologized to him, I hung the phone. I didn't even get back on the phone. I nicely hung the phone up and Demaje went back to smiling. But just imagine if I did not allow him to address that right that moment. That would have been another child being affected with an unhealed label. If I wouldn't have allowed him right that moment, he would have had low self esteem from that point on going forward. So you have to understand that sometimes you addressing those unhealed labels is not just for you. It's to break it off of your family line. It's to break that generational thing. You have to understand that you are the person that just may have to break those generational things by addressing them and healing from them. You might just be the person that's called to do that. I understand now that I was just simply the person that was called to my family and called to a nation of people to show them that there is a way to heal. It's a way to be able to heal and come out on the other side better. That there is a process that you don't have to tear up everything just to basically to go get to a place of healing. Then once you begin to start challenging those things, once you begin to challenge those labels, and then you have to begin to start replacing that negative talk, that negative thinking. That even goes with the company that you keep. I don't want to be around nobody that every day is doom and gloom. Every day the bottom has fell out your wagon. Every day it's just woe, it's me. I never want to feel like woe, it's me. I always want to feel like I can get up from where I am. And so, with that being said, that means being sometimes comfortable with saying that I might have to ride this one out alone because if I don't, my family might not just see what it looks like to see healing on the other side. And then the next thing you have to do is make sure that you play on your strengths. I had to start thinking about the things that I was strong at, the things that had strength in. Because I'm not going to say strong, y'all know I don't like that strong, but I had to find strength in the things that I knew that I was good at, that I knew that if I played to these strengths that I could win. You always play to your strengths. And once you begin to understand that I can achieve anything I put my mind to. See, it all starts with a thought. And once you begin to start thinking about the things that you want to accomplish in this life and the things that you see yourself doing and getting done, you ain't got no time to waste. I know that I don't have no time to waste. I've come to a place that, if I fail at it, then I'm going to try it again. I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to try it this way. I'm going to try it that way. But I just know that I don't have no time to waste. I don't have time to waste on silliness. I don't have time to waste on people that ain't going nowhere. I ain't got time to waste on people that's stagnant, procrastinating, people that don't want to heal. If you don't want to heal, if you don't want to be a place of being healed, whole, and happy, then I'm not your cup of tea. Because that's just where I am in my life now, where I want to be healed, happy, and whole. And if I'm not in that, if you're not in a place of moving towards that, then I really don't want to be in that company. I want to be in a company and supporting people that, what I'm saying, that want to see themselves out. You got to want to see yourself in a better place. And once I began wanting to see myself in a better place, once went through, the almost 2 years of therapy and working on me and self-care and all of that, once I began to start realizing that, I understood my value. Once you begin to understand your value, you will not allow anybody to devalue you. You will not allow anybody to put a label or on you that you don't want. You will not allow anybody to label you with things that's going to tear you down. You are not, once you begin to understand that I hold value and I am worth the space and I take up space. And because I take up space, I'm not going to allow you to tear me down. See, and then I'm not going to allow you to label me with that. See, you got to think about that. So when I thought about that, when you think about somebody saying, oh, you just like your daddy or you just like your mama or whatever, I don't really know what my mama or daddy went through because guess what? I won't hear when they were going through. Or when I did get here, I didn't have a clue. So how dare you label me with something that I don't even have anything to do with? I'm sorry that he was a Rolling Stone. I'm sorry that she was this. I'm sorry that she was that. But don't put that on me. And then now here I am, 30, 40, 50 years later dealing with it. But I tell you what, the faster you deal with it, the faster you acknowledge it, the faster you can heal from it. The faster you can heal from it. Don't allow anybody. I'm telling you, you know, I told y'all I used to throw hands because I used to throw hands a whole lot. And now I can channel all of that differently because I don't allow anybody just to handle me any type of way. Don't allow anybody to just handle you any type of way. Don't let anybody devalue who you are. Don't, you know what? Better yet, I came to a place of I'm not going to let somebody else validate who I am. I am the only person that can validate who I am, and I'm the only person that can answer to what you're calling me. I have a choice to whether or not I'm going to allow you to put a label on me. And because I'm not going to allow you to put an unhealed label on me, then that means now I know how to move accordingly. I know what people I'm going to deal with. I know what people I'm not going to deal with. And if I do know how to deal, if I do have to deal with them, I know how to deal with them. You better believe I'm not going to walk away scarred. I'm definitely not going to walk away scarred. I'm definitely not going to walk away without me shutting down whatever you thought you was going to label me with. I'm going to shut it down. Because when you worked as hard as I worked to remove those labels and continue to work to remove those labels, you're not going to allow anybody to undo the work that you've done. That's just like you going to work and working 40 hours in 1 week, and you in 2 weeks, you only basically getting paid for 20 hours. That's the same exact thing when you talking about your healing. You the time and the hours that I've invested in my healing, I am not going to allow anybody or anything or any person to be able to disrupt that. It's simple as that. As simple as that. And if you can resonate with some of these, you know, ways of being able to recognize that you carry these unhealed labels, I want you to take the time and to address them. And I want to leave you with that. I want you to leave you with how you begin to remove those labels. And the way that you begin to to remove those unhealed labels, you're going to identify it, you're going to acknowledge it, you're going to challenge that unhealed label. Is it a fact or is it an opinion? You're going to replace that negative talk and those negative thoughts with affirmations of who you are and validating yourself, and not allowing a person or a thing or or your status to validate you. You're going to play off of your strengths and your talents, and you're going to give yourself compassion, show yourself some grace, and you're going to be in the company of good people that understand that you understand that you they know your value and what you bring to the table. And that's what I'm going to leave with you tonight, is that once you know your value and what you bring to the table, you will not allow anybody to put any labels on you, and also you will be able to heal from those labels. So all I'm saying to you is that I just want to be a resource. I just want to show you how I did it. You might not have to go through those steps, but I'm telling you, you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. And I'm telling you, once you begin to do it, once you begin to start conquering those unhealed labels, it's an amazing feeling. I'm telling you, it's like a renewed feeling. It's like a weight lifted off of you. And I encourage you this week and going forward, to begin to start looking at those labels, looking at them. Do you got stinky thinking? Only you know if your thinking is stinking. Do you always talk negative? Or are you always, in the midst of negative talk? Are you fearful of moving forward? Do you procrastinate? Are you sensitive about, of criticism? Do you self-sabotage? If these are some things that you're doing, I want you to know from somebody that has healed from those things that you are wearing those labels. And now it's time for you to start working on them and dealing with them. And once you begin to do that, it's an amazing feeling, an amazing space. I appreciate you just letting me tell my story tonight. So I'm gonna leave this with you tonight that you do have the ability and you do have the power to be able to heal from those labels. You do have the ability to do it. You don't have to allow anybody to put any unhealed labels on you. If you are walking around with those labels on you, you now have the power and the ability. I have given you the little uh, five five steps, the 5 steps to be able to get there. But you got to want to do it for yourself. I know I wanted to do it for myself, and because I wanted to do it for myself, and I because I want to walk in a place of being healed, whole, and happy, I just wanted to go through. I wanted to recognize those things. And once you begin to recognize them and work through them, you come out so much better. Yo, this is your girl Vonda. I'm gonna get out of here. I'll talk to you guys soon. Just remember, you have the power to change your outcome. This is your girl Vonda, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.